Coming up on Ask the Tech Geeks, I am Mikah Sargent, and we start off the show by talking about how keyboard shortcuts and automations can really mean all the difference in cutting down on time.
And on top of that, we also look at how you can actually clean up and organize all those photos on your iPhone, as well as keep track of all those things that you're trying to watch across all of the services.
Plus, a caller gives me the opportunity to wax ecstatic about the M2 MacBook Air and why I think it's a great device for pretty much anyone who's in the market for a new MacBook. Stay tuned for Ask the Tech Geeks.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Ask the Tech Geeks, a very special episode of Ask the Tech Guys with Mikah Sargent and Rosemary Orchard in person. Episode 1969, recorded Sunday, April 9th, 2023. The Dog in My Handbag. This episode of Ask the Tech Guys is brought to you by Cisco Meraki. With employees working in different locations, providing a unified work experience seems as easy as herding cats. How do you rein in so many moving parts? The Meraki Cloud Managed Network. Learn how your organization can make hybrid work work. Visit meraki.cisco.com/twit. And by Melissa. More than 10,000 clients worldwide in retail, education, healthcare, insurance, finance, and government rely on Melissa for full-spectrum data quality and ID verification software. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. And by Electric E-Bikes. Start your next adventure with Electric E-Bikes. Ready, Set, Spring Sale. Visit electricebikes.com to learn more and explore the new Expedition Cargo e-bike and all of the other epic models Electric has to offer. It's time for Ask the Tech Geeks. That's right, it's a very special episode of ATG because joining me this week, it's not a guy, but it is a geek. It's Rosemary Orchard.
Hi, Mikah. Hey, everybody.
Hello. You're here in person.
I know, right? You asked me to do this ages ago, and I was like, I can get flights for then. And so I did.
You did. And you're here, and it's Easter, so we're wearing Easter bunny ears. Mm-hmm. And you've brought delicious chocolate from the UK. And it's just all around awesome. I am excited about this episode of Ask the Tech Geeks, where you out there call in with your tech questions, and we do our best to answer them here on the show. Sometimes you email them in, sometimes you send us video. Remember that if you want to get in touch with us and ask your questions, you can do so by going to call.twit.tv. We think the best way to do that is by going to it on your phone, because when you do, then you'll get a little prompt that says open this up in Zoom, and then you can actually join a Zoom call where you'll wait and we'll bring you on the show. You can ask your question. And the reason why we think that's the best way to do it is because with the smartphone, then the camera's right there, the microphone's right there. There's not a whole bunch of configuration that you have to do. It just works. And so yeah, call.twit.tv to join the Zoom and give us a ring. Or if you do have a question you want to ask us via email, that's atg@twit.tv. Or if you'd like, you can do attg@twit.tv or ask the tech guys at twit.tv. They all work, but we like to keep it simple. So I thought that today, because you're here, it would be a great time to talk about saving time on our PCs, on our mobile devices, because I think that sometimes that can be an underestimated sort of field that's worth looking into.
Yeah.
Sometimes folks will go, okay, I could learn the keyboard shortcuts, but that's so much. When you take the time to learn them, when you get that muscle memory,
oh yeah,
it can save you so much time.
It does. Like even just basic things like copy and paste, not having to move your mouse to the right area to then right click at something to trigger the copy and then go somewhere else and trigger the paste. Add in, say, Control or Command Tab, depending on if you're Windows or Linux or Mac. And then, you can switch between applications and copy and paste without your hands ever going off of the actual keys and having to use a trackpad or a mouse.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is, especially for those of us who are touch typers who, learned to type without looking. We save even more time that way. And I'll be honest, sometimes you help somebody out with a problem they're having on their computer, and you see them sort of take the mouse and they move it over. They're going up to file. They're going up to edit. And you're like, oh, we could save you so much time.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth it.
Oh, yeah.
And so one of the, I recently did an episode of Hands on Mac. If you're not a member of the club, you should join the club at Club Twit. It's twit.tv/clubtwit. And you can check out that episode. Actually, we published that episode to everyone. And now that I remember, so you can actually go and watch that, twit.tv/HOM, to watch that episode. And it's about keyboard shortcuts for the Mac, specifically regarding text editing. And what brought this up is last week, my co-host on the show was Ant Pruitt. And Ant has recently made the switch from Windows to macOS and was kind of trying to relearn a new muscle memory for his new keyboard shortcuts. And he was talking about how he would hit the home key, the end key to move to the front of some text, to the end of some text. And so I thought this would be the perfect time to go through, because they're so second nature for me. I use, the option key and the arrow keys to move around text and then select it. And it gave me this realization of, this would be the perfect time to kind of teach folks how to use it, but then if they can see it sort of play out, they can see how much time that would end up saving them. And I think that's the big thing. But, I will talk a little bit more about keyboard shortcuts, but there are more ways to help save you time on your devices. And you are very good at helping people save time. Every week we record our show on Tuesdays, iOS Today, and people write in and they say, I have this problem and I'd like to solve it with shortcuts. And in many cases, you provide an example of how to fix the problem. So for the folks who are tuning in on this show, let's hear a little bit about the Shortcuts app, and then maybe if you've got some basic things that have helped save you time. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, the Shortcuts app is an app that's available on iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. And it's essentially a way to stick some blocks together with Lego so that you can take, say, a picture and overlay some text on top of it, or crop it and resize it, reformat it, and then maybe automatically share it to, say, one of your podcasting co-hosts like Mikah or something else. And it's just a really useful app where you can take stuff in, put stuff out, or not take anything in and just create something. So going back to what you were saying, Mikah, about, copying and pasting. Well, if there's a chunk of text that you need again and again and again, well, you could actually just put it in a shortcut and have a shortcut for copying directions to get to my house, for example. And then you can just tap that and voila, you've got that. And I mean, I have loads of things that I use shortcuts for. I mean, one of them, Mikah, is doing a lot of the prep for iOS Today, like getting links for all of those apps for the show notes. No, I'm sorry. Like as much as I love doing like the show, I'm not going to spend hours going through the App Store when I could just type the names of all the apps and then be like, okay, it's this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, and it'll just chuck it all together for me, copy it, and I paste it into the document.
Nice.
So yeah, there was one thing that I was doing yesterday, which I can't show you on my Mac, but was really useful. Is I was in a store and there was something without a price tag on, but I knew that if I looked up the barcode from that item on the website of the store, then it would tell me how much it was. And so I just created a really quick 2-action shortcut, which just scans the barcode and then copies it to the clipboard. And that's literally all it does. But this is really useful for things like QR codes as well. Like you see a QR code somewhere and maybe you don't necessarily want to actually open that website now because you want to remember it for later or something. Well, you can scan it and copy it and then you can paste it wherever you like send it to a friend or whatever. So things like that. And there was one that I did for you on Tuesday, Mikah, because you were saying that the New York Times Games app had changed its name on iOS. And the way that you open it is always by going to Spotlight and then typing in CRO for crossword, which worked until they renamed the app. But if you add a shortcut for the crossword app, for the New York Times Games app, then voila, then literally it's one single action, folks. It just opens an app, but it then adds that into your search.
Yep.
So that you have an alternative name for something.
And I set that up that day and I've been using it. So I didn't have to change my muscle memory.
Exactly.
Which was really nice. I see, and I think that when folks are having these issues, they often, you go the slog route until you realize how much time can be saved. And sometimes you see that aha moment where they go, wait, I could, and then you get inspired and you want to create more. But like, how does somebody who is not as versed as you are in shortcuts, or even in the idea of just, I bet there's a way to make this faster, they're not necessarily thinking in that mindset. How do we get someone into that mindset? Is it just about going in and playing around? Is it about finding good shortcuts? Is it about finding a friend who knows how? What do you think is kind of the best way to go about learning what's possible?
Well, I mean, if you want to learn shortcuts, then of course you should watch iOS Today, because we have Shortcuts Corner every week. And a little bit of self-promotion. I also wrote a book called Take Control of Shortcuts, which you can get a copy of for $9.99. But there's also a really great guide on the Apple website for the iOS and the macOS version. But honestly, the best thing that I think anybody should be doing who thinks like, maybe I can be a little bit more efficient at this, or more productive, or maybe I can just make fewer mistakes when I'm doing this, is to look at what you're doing. Like, actually think about what you're doing. Don't just mindlessly do the thing. Like, actually have a moment where you're like, okay, I'm just going to have a look at what I'm actually doing here. Like, this is the step 1, step 2, step 3. And even as you're just looking at it, like if you write it down, or even if you just make a mental list, you'll suddenly realize that instead of, doing this thing where you have to go from here to here to here to here to here back 17 times, if you prepared everything over here, then you could just take it all over there and do the thing. Like, whatever it is, it's a little bit about the reflection process to start with before you can really dive into the automation. And for shortcuts, there's actually a gallery, which I have open on my Mac. There's also a gallery on the iPhone, where you can just get like a whole list of various, things that you can do. And these are already made, and you can just download these. You don't need to know how to create them. You don't need to know how to do anything with them. And that's it. Batch add reminders. Oh yeah, I often need to add a bunch of things to reminders. Sure, I'm going to grab that. And you just tap on the plus and voila, that's it. It's now in all shortcuts. And if I want to have a look at it, I can see what it's going to do. It's even got a little explanation here.
That's really nice, the documentation. And being able to see how it's built is quite nice. Someone had pointed out, they're not super versed with Mac stuff. Another place that I've found this to be helpful is in very specific instances of very small problems. I have made use of generative AI, and this is the part where some people groan because, like, oh God, he's talking about AI again. But it was really nice. The other day, I needed to quickly get the titles of all of the episodes published in an RSS feed from this date to this date, and I wanted them in an unordered list that I could then copy and paste where I wanted it. And I had thought, there are a whole bunch of different ways that I could make this happen. And the way that I am going to make it happen is by just making a Python script. And so I knew a little bit of what I needed to do, but I was having trouble with, for some reason, the sort of standard requests package that you use with Python was not working. And so every time I would, go to run the script, it was saying that it couldn't find requests. And I'm like, I know, I've used pip, I've installed it. What the heck is going on?
Was it Python 2 versus Python 3 by any chance?
It was I was installing it in the wrong environment because I had done PyEnv. And so there was a specific Python environment. So what I did was I went to ChatGPT and I said, I'm getting this error, but I know I've installed requests using pip. And it said, you might be installing it in the wrong environment. Add this little tag, which was like -m, before you do it, and that will probably solve the problem. I did it, and it solved the problem. I was able immediately to get that list of podcast episodes, and instead of having to go manually and copy and paste all of those. And there are so many different ways that we can solve these problems, of course, but I like that there are so many different ways that we can solve these problems. And it is platform agnostic. You don't need to be on a particular system to be able to do that. I almost I wish that there was more of an opportunity to be a bit of a a concierge, I guess, of solutions for people, where those small times you could look at their workflow and you could go, this, and this could be solved if we just create these little custom tools for you. And I think that could help so many people, and also, again, inspire them to want to make some of their own, because that's what it was for me. It's like once there was Text Expander was my sort of gateway entry into automation. And once I started using Text Expander, which if folks don't know, it is a tool that lets you sort of create little keywords that can be expanded into larger sentences, larger paragraphs, bits of text. So an example of this is I regularly have to type out my email. So instead of typing out my entire email, I can just do a little shortcut. It's technically called a snippet. And the trigger phrase is semicolon Gmail, or if it's my @me.com address, then semicolon ME. And then Text Expander sees that I've typed that, and then it replaces that short little phrase with my entire email. And over time, that starts to add up, and it saves you a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
And once I started doing that, it's like, wait, I could have this in so many other places. So now every repetitive task I'm doing, I'm going, how is it that I could automate this? And I just the other day, for Tech News Weekly, we have show notes, as many shows do.
Yep.
And we regularly have a little part at the end of every interview where we say, thank you for joining us, insert the name of the person here. If folks want to follow you online, where can they find you? And it's just a reminder to us to say that. But we were already typing their name in a different spot for the technical director. And so why do I need to type it twice if I can create something within Google Sheets, a little formula that will grab that name from there, pop it in there, and add the rest of the text.
Yeah,
So
I did something similar when I was tweaking the iOS Today sheet
That's
a while ago,
right.
because I realized that like I was putting the same thing in a couple of different places, and I was like, maybe I can just say equals this and format it as that. Which worked so well. And there's something that I actually want to recommend that's built into macOS and iOS, and there's also a version of this on Windows for folks who are thinking, oh, this Text Expander thing sounds interesting. I'd like to try it. Well, in system settings on Mac, I'm not 100% certain where it is on settings on iOS. There's this function called text replacements, where you can just have it like automatically expand a bunch of things. So if I expand @, so if I just type the @ symbol twice, then it puts my domain name, so I can put whatever email address in that I want. And this is a really great way to get started with this stuff. And also, going back to your keyboard shortcuts, Mikah, there's also a thing in here for like all the keyboard shortcuts on your Mac that are just like set globally. And also you can add custom ones for specific applications if you want.
yeah, I love that menu. And again, it just starts to make you feel very powerful. I think that's what's so fun about it. Now, you had a specific instance for folks who use Dropbox as a file storage or file management solution. And I am actually kind of amazed at what Dropbox has done over time in helping folks save time. So let's talk about Dropbox automation.
Yeah, so Dropbox has like two features which I use on a regular basis to make my life much easier. The first one is called file requests, where you can basically have a link that you give to somebody, they go to the link and it says, hey, like, please can you upload this file for Rosemary Orchard? And then they upload it. It puts their name first. So if they're already logged in, then they can upload from their Dropbox account, or they can just upload a file from their local machine. And then it puts their name at the beginning. If not, they're asked to input their name. But then on top of this, as well as like getting that file and putting it in the folder that I specifically requested and like designated for this purpose, there's this great feature called folder automations or folder actions, where you can actually set up your folder so that whenever files get added there, something happens automatically. So for example, it can rename the files, or it can move things to other folders based on what type of file that is. And this is really great because it doesn't even need to happen on your computer. So if you're dealing with lots of files that are sort of coming and going, and maybe you've got shared folders with other people. I know, Mikah, you share a bunch of Dropbox folders with folks, and so do I. Then it's very useful for just being able to be like, okay, so when stuff goes into this folder, magic will happen. Magic that I've created. Maybe you can use ChatGPT or something similar to get some recommendations for stuff that you can do. But But yeah, there's all sorts of things like watermarking images. Like if you want to watermark all the images thrown into a folder. So for example, maybe you're a photographer and you take photos of like dance competitions or something. We have a friend who does that. And you just want like a really quick preview system for people. You can just dump the photos into the folder and it'll just do it. And that's great, especially if you're doing things from your phone or from a tablet where you don't necessarily have as much power or the ability or the time to do everything yourself.
Yes, that, again, saving time in these small ways, it starts to add up. And it's worth, because that's kind of always been the ongoing joke is sort of, I invested so much time in my automation process that did I really save time? But if you devote the time once, then from that point forward, you can sort of have this revelation, this realization that it is, it's going to save you a lot of time in the long run. And I love, again, about Text Expander, if you want to, they have an email that they'll send you and it'll tell you how much time you saved. And I think it's every month. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of wild how much that adds up just in the regular keyboard shortcuts that I'm using with that app. Yeah. All right. So again, if you have questions and you'd like to ask them live on the show, you can do so by going to call.twit.tv. That's call.twit.tv on your mobile device, or, hey, maybe you've got everything set up. You know exactly how it's working. You can do that from your computer as well and join us in the Zoom call to have your question answered live on the show. But I do want to take a quick break here to tell you about our first sponsor. Ask the Tech Guys is brought to you by Cisco Meraki, the experts in cloud-based networking for hybrid work. So if your employees are working at home, if they're working at a cabin in the mountains, on a lounge chair at the beach, in a lift on the way from San Francisco to Petaluma, a cloud-managed network provides the same exceptional work experience no matter where they happen to be. You may as well go ahead and roll out that welcome mat if you've been resistant to rolling out the welcome mat. Let it go. It's time, because hybrid work is here to stay. Hybrid work works best in the cloud and has its perks for both employees and for leaders, because workers can move faster, they can deliver better results with a cloud-managed network, while leaders can automate distributed operations, build more sustainable workspaces, and proactively protect the network. An IDG Market Pulse research report conducted for Meraki highlights top-tier opportunities in supporting hybrid work. Firstly, hybrid work is a priority for 78% of C-suite executives. Leaders want to drive collaboration forward while staying on top of boosting productivity and security. Hybrid work, well, it also has its challenges. The IDG report raises the red flag about security, noting that 48% of leaders report cybersecurity threats as a primary obstacle to improving workforce experiences. Always-on security monitoring is part of what makes the cloud-managed network so awesome. IT can use apps from Meraki's vast ecosystem of partners as well. These are turnkey solutions built to work seamlessly with the Meraki Cloud Platform for asset tracking, for location analytics, and more. And in using those, they can gather insights on how people use their workspaces. So in a smart space, environmental sensors can track activity and occupancy levels to stay on top of cleanliness. They can reserve workspaces based on vacancy and employee profiles. This is also called hot desking. This allows employees to scout out a spot in a snap. Locations in restricted environments can be booked in advance and include time-based door access. And then, I think this is the big one, MDM, mobile device management. Integrating devices and systems allow IT to manage, update, and troubleshoot company-owned devices, even when the device and the employee are in a remote location. You can turn any space into a place of productivity and empower your organization with the same exceptional experience no matter where they work with Meraki and the Cisco suite of technology. So, learn how your organization can make hybrid work by visiting meraki.cisco.com/twit. That's meraki.cisco.com/twit. And of course, we thank Cisco Meraki for sponsoring this week's episode of Ask the Tech Guys. All right, back to the show. And this, of course, is Ask the Tech Geeks, joined this week by Rosemary Orchard, which is super awesome to have you here in person.
Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me come. I wasn't sure I was going to be allowed into the studio. But fortunately, you guys made an exception. So I'm here.
You're here,
Awesome.
And we're doing the show, and it's been great so far. We are going to head into some email questions that we've received. We have someone named Tom who's written in, and I think this is a great question, particularly for today's show. Tom writes, do you have a recommendation for an app or a method for deleting and sorting iPhone photos? Also, my photos are not syncing with my iPad. I'm not an Apple guy. Thanks. So on top of wanting to know how to delete and sort iPhone photos, Tom seems to be having an issue syncing with Tom's iPad. So I think we're going to be on the same page when it comes to deleting photos. What is your thought there?
Well, my first thought is that before you do anything, Tom, you actually need to fix the fact that the photos aren't syncing with the iPad, because there's a couple of reasons why that could be happening. And the last thing I want to do is say, yeah, sure, go ahead and delete a bunch of pictures, and then you've lost all of those pictures because it turns out your phone isn't syncing with the cloud at all. So what you would need to do is in settings on your iPhone and settings on your iPad, it'll look approximately the same. You just need to make sure the apps using iCloud and iCloud Photos is then turned on. And you're going to need to make sure you've got enough storage space as well. You can see that my photo is taking up about 120 gigabytes, and you're going to need to make sure you've got enough storage space in your iCloud plan for all of your pictures. So if you've got a lot of pictures, you may need to upgrade your storage plan to a larger one to allow for that. And I would do that first and make sure that everything is synced and backed up before you start actually going through and deleting and organizing things, just because this way it's also got a backup in the cloud. You can, of course, use other apps like Dropbox or similar to back up your photos before you start, but making sure that things are syncing first also gives you the opportunity to do some of this on other devices, because, that's something you may want to do.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. Before you do anything else, you want to make sure everything's syncing as it needs to. So once we've got the syncing figured out, especially on an iPad. Oh, and this is actually, I just thought of something. Mm-hmm. I saw this happen recently where my partner's family, two of them, were having an issue where they had created a shared photo album.
Oh.
And the other person was unable to access the shared photo album.
Interesting.
And so while they were with me, I said, okay, let's create a new shared photo album. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Nothing was working.
Yeah.
Couldn't figure it out. I'm, looking, there's storage. Is it the storage space? Is it this? Is it what it ended up being? They had not accepted the new iCloud terms of service.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you've had syncing working and suddenly it cuts out and you've tried everything else, the suggestions that Rosemary made, make sure that on that iPad, you go into the settings app, you tap on, I believe it's under general. And if it's not under general, then you just tap on your name banner at the top. And there's a little tab that kind of shows itself that says iCloud terms of service need to be accepted. You tap on that, you choose accept.
Yeah, it would be showing up where my iPhone was if I needed to accept them, but I've already done that. So
right. And so the reason why it wasn't working is because essentially Apple says until you're okay with our new terms of service, we're not going to be able to let you use the service that you're wanting to use. So we did that, and then suddenly everything was syncing again. So it was really good that it was a simple solution, but it was one that was kind of buried. You wouldn't think necessarily that would, I think an average person outside of technology would not necessarily think that would stop them from accessing what they wanted to. Yeah. So in terms of deleting photos, how would one go about finding photos that need to be deleted?
Well, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. So first of all, in the Photos app on your iPhone, if you go into the Albums section and then you scroll down towards the bottom, then there is this section here called Duplicates. And if you tap on Duplicates, then what your iPhone and your iPad and your Mac do, and they do this locally and offline. So it may not necessarily have done it on all of your devices yet, but it goes through and it looks for duplicate photos. And I have a number here, some of which I may have prepared earlier, not entirely intentionally, intentionally. But it will find duplicates. And then what you can do is you can tap on it and say merge. But before you do that, if we have a look, then one of these pictures is 4.4 megabytes and the other one is 2.6 megabytes. So when I tap merge, because these are the same picture, it's going to just pick one and it's going to pick the larger one. But if I had something where there were two very similar pictures, I think this one, nope, it's not going to do it. I've already dealt with those on iOS today. But if you had two pictures that were very taken like seconds apart, then it would also let you pick one of them, which is a very useful thing to be able to do there. And what you can also do is actually just say select all and then go merge all of these. I'm not going to do that, partially because I need to keep this for future episodes of iOS Today where we get asked this question again, and also just because I do actually want to go through and check. Not that I don't trust iOS to be really good at like figuring the stuff out, but also just in case.
I'm the same way. Yeah, I'm exactly the same way. It takes me... I thought, I'm just going to do it. And I thought, no, can't do it. I gotta see and make sure that it's exactly as I want.
Yeah, I should actually say for folks who are looking at this going, actually, I kind of don't want this picture. Like, how can I get rid of it? If you tap and hold on any of these images, then you can tap show in all photos and it'll show you that so that you can actually see that. And then I can see wherever it was, there we go. It's the same picture saved from Instagram yesterday. So, I can actually just be like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to delete this entirely. I don't care about this anymore and be done with it.
Now, are there some third-party solutions for this this problem?
Yeah, there are. A great one, which I love, is a little app called Gemini by MacPaw. Now, there's Gemini for Mac, which can do duplicate files in general, but there's also Gemini Photos for iOS, which you can download, and it will go through and analyze, but it doesn't just look for duplicates. It looks for loads of photos taken within like a short frame of time. So, for example, if you use burst mode on your iPhone a lot, where it will take 10 pictures, or it will just take pictures while you're holding down the shutter button instead of turning it into a video, then it will go, hey, out of all of these, we think this one's the best. Is this the one you want? And then you can select it and confirm that that's the one you want to keep and continue on your way. And that's a really useful app to have. I really like that. I do have it on my phone, but it was that's fine. So the app itself, it will, not just show you duplicates, but can also help you separate out different categories. So you were talking to Tom about sorting. That's one of the great things about it is it has a photo radar feature that will actually help you decide to move things to a specific album. So if you've got lots of screenshots, those can get moved to a screenshot album. If you have, sometimes it'll help you enhance photos. So depending on how it's saved, how it's cropped, how it's stored, that can be helpful. And then as Rosemary was pointing out, one of the things that I think makes it particularly magical is that along with just doing straight up duplicates, it does similar. And so being able to go, okay, these 4 photos that I took all within this period of time are similar, and finding the one that you want. And then it also has, I don't know if you mentioned the blurred feature, but I did not mention that, no.
That's the other thing. It has, it's smart enough to detect when a photo is blurry. And so then you can see, that was an accidental photo that I took. I can remove that one because it obviously is not worth having on my device. It will run in the background. It runs better if you have it running in the foreground, especially like for the first time that it's looking through your photos. But after that, it'll run in the background, and the photo radar feature will regularly send you push notifications saying, hey, here's a thing that I could see that you might want to change about your library. So for mine, it has kind of documents and screenshots, and it says you probably want to move all of these to their own album and get them out of kind of the main view. So it's very helpful. And then, as you mentioned, if you get it on the Mac, being able to do it for photos but also for files is a great way to save storage space. So yeah, Tom, we've given you some sort of inbuilt features and some third-party methods for being able to sort through and manage your photos.
Yeah, I did just want to mention one other thing on the built-in Photos app. there's some really nice smart albums that are built into photos. So, I showed folks the duplicates before, but there's also places and people, which are the two most commonly used things. Like whenever I'm looking for pictures, for example, pictures I took in San Francisco, well, if I open the photos and I actually share my phone so that folks can actually see that, then that would be even better. So if I open the Photos app and then I go to Places, then I get this map of the world with pictures I've taken all over the place. And as I zoom in on places, then I can find, for example, the pictures I've taken up here in Petaluma, pictures I've taken in San Francisco, and so on and so forth. And then also if I go to People, then I can scroll down and look, I can find Mikah and see pictures of Mikah from the last time that we met up, Mikah, which was a little while ago.
It's been a while.
Yeah. But there we go. And these are just built in. And if it recognizes somebody, then you can actually, add a name to them and link them to your contacts and stuff like that. And that's just all built in. And then bonus, these will show up in the search as well. So if I type San Francisco in the search, or if I type Petaluma in the search, then it'll find the pictures I've taken here. If I type Mikah, then it'll find the pictures of you.
That's so helpful. I've used that a lot, particularly when I'm telling someone about a memory that I've had, and I can type in a location based on that, or a year, or what have you, to find that. We do have someone calling in. It's I'm going to go with Arizona Neil. I think that's what that AZ stands for. Arizona Neil is calling us. If you have questions, call.twit.tv is how you get in touch. You'll use Zoom for the call. And so we're bringing Arizona Neil on to ask a question. Hello, Arizona Neil.
Hello, Mikah. Hello, Mary. Nice to meet both of you.
Rosemary,
I you before, Rosemary, I'm sorry.
No
Miss got that, but I have watched your show, iOS Today as well. I've been watching for many years.
Thank you.
But I did come up with a question while I'm sitting here with you about the shortcuts. You reminded me of something. I have several Amazon Echoes all around the house, but I also have some HomePods. And I often you'll use, this to be simple, I'm thinking, I often will use my, what's the word for it? The Alexa to actually give me a weather forecast. So what's the weather forecast? I thought, well, I could use the HomePod to do the same thing, but it does not. Whenever I try to do the HomePod, or I'm sorry, the HomePod for the weather, it says that it's missing a shortcut to deliver that. I'm thinking that's why I thought of the question when I saw Rosemary on the show. I said, what am I missing in here? I don't see what shortcut I would add, and I don't know how I would add it to a HomePod. So what is it? Why is it not smart enough, if you will, to give a weather forecast, for example?
Well, I think the answer here is actually that you have a shortcut that you probably don't want. And so if you open the Shortcuts app on your phone, and so that's the app with the blue icon with sort of a pink diamond and a turquoise diamond overlaid on it, and then you actually go into the Shortcuts app, then you can actually type into the search. And if you just type something like, for example, weather, then you will probably find a shortcut that is the statement that you're saying. So what's the weather today, or something like that. And then you can just rename or delete that shortcut, and then it'll go away. And to delete a shortcut, I will just use this one, which I created for an iOS Today demo. So I can see that that one's there. I can just tap and hold on it, and then tap on the delete, and then I would go ahead and confirm that I want to delete that. And that should be that. I suspect what it is you may have something, for example, I've got one using the Carrot app here, where you've then uninstalled the app later. And that's what's causing the problem. And so the action will just be sort of empty and not really showing anything there.
Yeah. I was thinking like dark sky.
Yeah, it could well be a dark sky thing, actually, considering the fact that that app is no longer available. It may also be, if you've been doing this over the last few days, Apple's weather system has been a little more up and down than the weather. So you may have actually run afoul of the fact that Apple's weather system has been offline if you've done it over the last few days. But other than that, I'm thinking that there's a shortcut that you've got installed with a name that just needs to be deleted or renamed. You can rename things as well. I should show folks for people who don't know how to do that. So what you can do, if you open the shortcut on iOS, you just tap on the three dots in the top right. Then if you use the info at the bottom, then you've got all of your things here, and you can just make sure everything's working. But if you just tap on that area at the top with the name, then you can then go ahead and rename it. And so I could just put, for example, if I could spell, I could put Mikah at the end. And then I would know that that's not the one that I'm going to be triggering through my voice.
That's one of the tough things at times with shortcuts is the naming can sometimes get in the way of what you want to say to Siri. Because when you sort of summon Siri and ask it for something, you will have it will sort of try to be mindful of what you're saying and look at all of the possibilities for what you may be asking. And one of those ways that it does so is by looking into your shortcuts library that's tied to your iCloud account. And so if there's a shortcut that is very close to, if not the exact same as what you're asking, then it's going to think that you're intending to run that shortcut, as opposed to it just going, I'm hearing what you're saying and I'm responding. It's going, I'm hearing what you're saying, I'm finding that shortcut and I'm running that shortcut. And since whatever app or service that was once there is not there, it tries to run it and then it responds with what you got, which was something along the lines of like, that shortcut doesn't work, or I need you to fix a shortcut, or I need a new shortcut, or whatever. That is the one problem that I've noticed when it comes to that, because at times you are just looking for that generic response where if Siri had never sort of had never had access to a shortcuts library, then it wouldn't rely on that at all. And it would just go, here's the question that you're asking, here's the answer, and you're done. But it goes, oh, you may be trying to run this. So I don't know, if I said crossword to it, it might try to run that crossword shortcut, for example. Definitely give that a look into the Shortcuts app. And that is such a great question, because I always love it when folks call in with questions that end up being helpful for so many other folks, because even if they're not having the same exact weather issue, they could be having another issue that's similar, where they're saying, turn on the TV, but because you created a shortcut at one point called turn on the TV that like turned on a TCL Roku TV that had HomeKit connectivity that you no longer have, for example, then instead of just going, oh, what you're asking is to turn on the Apple TV you have in the living room, it thinks, I'm supposed to run this shortcut. That doesn't work. So then it just 404s kind of.
It runs into that area where it's like, I like, this is what I know that I'm supposed to do, but I can't do this. And it doesn't have this, oh, but they probably meant this, so I'll do that option instead. That
inference of understanding there would be great. AZ Neil, that is such a fantastic question, and we appreciate you calling in. You'll have to let us know how it goes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate that. Love the show. Take care.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
All righty. I think we can go to another written in question. This one comes from Vikrant, who has written in and said, in the Apple Podcast app, is there a way to see the queue of my list? Meaning I see how to line up the next podcast while I am listening to the one that I'm currently listening to. But what if I want to line up, say, 10 episodes and see my list? Is that possible? And then there's going to be a second question, but let's start with this one. So essentially, in the same way that the music app, where I can say, I want to listen to this, and then I want to add this to up next, and then I want to add something after, I want to add this later, all of this, I can start to create sort of a bespoke playlist, an ephemeral playlist in that moment. Am I able to queue up episodes in the Apple Podcasts app, which we all know is something that is in pretty much every third-party podcast app? That's kind of like one of the main features that make third-party podcast apps what they are.
Yeah. So, and this is a really good question, because it works a little differently to the music app. Because in the music app on iOS, what you can do when you're looking at, say, a list of, if these were tracks in the music app, then I can just tap on the three dots and be like, sure, I want to play this next, or I play this last. And so I'll just go down and add something to my play next list. And then in the music app, what you can do, if you look at your now playing section, then there's a list option, and there isn't a list here. And this is the thing that's a little confusing, because what you have to do is swipe up And if you swipe up, then you see playing next, and you can see the things that are in your list of things to play. There's also a section here for chapters and show notes, right? So, if you were looking for something and it was mentioned, so if I just, for example, go ahead to the next episode, which happens to be an episode of iOS Today, looking at music, then I can see all of our episode notes there, and then underneath that, there's playing next. So that's pretty cool. It's really handy to have all this information, but you need to know to swipe, because in music, there's a little icon that it's like bullet points with lists next to it. And
I love it when these have simple answers. Remember the individual who called in and asked, I did this thing where I set a timer on my Apple Watch, and I don't know how to say that in the exact right way to make it happen again.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was just how the timer app worked by default.
Yeah. But you needed to show the timer app to get the screen that he was looking for. Yeah.
I love that. All right. And then let us do one more question here, and we'll take a quick break. Michael has written in and has said, there's a recent article on Mac Rumors that highlights a change to the Up Next section of the Apple TV app. Apple, with tvOS 16.2, updates the Up Next section in the Watch Now tab of the Apple TV app, instead adding a large featured content section with no option to disable it. The previews also autoplay content with audio, much to the annoyance of Apple TV users. I have been using and enjoying the Apple TV Watch Now, which keeps track of shows I have watched on my streaming services, except for Netflix and Stan, which isn't recognized. The redesign still works, but it's not as nice as it was. I searched for other solutions where the Apple TV can track what I watch automatically and show me the next episode in the series to watch, as well as showing me what new episodes arrive in the order they are released. There is an app called Tracked, which looks like it might do what I want, but doesn't seem to be supported by the Apple TV. There was an episode of iOS Today on May 15th, 2021, okay, historian, which highlights apps for tracking shows and books, but didn't explore automatic tracking, only manually adding shows you have watched in an app. I am using the Just Watch app to manually track shows I watch. Is there a better way to track shows on an Apple TV? Open source is always preferred. Now, I remember someone calling in to Ask the Tech Guy, the radio show, and talking about an app that did this. I don't recall what the app was.
So the thing that I'm thinking, or the problem that I'm thinking of here, Mikah, is that tracking things automatically that you've watched on Apple TV, that's your problem. Because tracking things manually is super easy. You pull out your phone, maybe you use an app that I've recommended called Sofa to do this. Maybe you use Tracked, which is a great service that I also use. But automatically figuring out what you've been watching on an Apple TV and then adding that to another service, that's going to be a bit trickier, because there is nothing that can sort of like tie in and be like watching what you're doing on the Apple TV, because there's services that can figure out what you've watched on Netflix and add it to Tracked if you watch Netflix using Chrome on your Mac, which if you do that, then you AirPlay it to the Apple TV, then it could do it automatically. But that's kind of tricky. Personally, I've gone full nerd. I have my own home media server. I've ripped a bunch of DVDs and I put them into a great service called Plex. And because it's pretty much all in one place, and then Plex can even send it to Tracked, I know exactly what I've been watching. But that's not going to be a good solution for most people. Nobody wants to sit down with a pile of DVDs nowadays and rip them all, right? I'm such a weirdo, Mikah. I've ended up with 2 DVD players so I can do this more efficiently. So I can put the next DVD in so that when it's ripping one, then it's queued up the next one ready to go.
Oh, that's amazing.
But I can't imagine most people are going to want to do that. So I think your best option is probably going to be using something like the Sofa app that I have recommended before, which you can have whatever you like in there. So, for example, I've got movies and shows to watch, and if I go into Jack Ryan, which I have finished watching, then I can actually I can log this into my activity and say that I've watched it. Tracked is a great service. I do personally use it. I do really love it. It's one of the many options out there. So yeah, have a play with some of the options. Unfortunately, you're going to struggle to find this stuff open source, Michael, because all of that data is collected by a number of services. The movie database, TMDB, does have open source data. So something that's integrating with TMDB will probably be more likely to be open source. But it's not a guarantee, I'm afraid. So if you do find something open source, I'd love to hear about it.
I am wondering, now that I think about it, if Apple sort of undid a bit of that that change where there was the Up Next promotional content, because
Oh, there was something in there about spoilers at one point. I remember this because they changed how Up Next works because spoilers were kind of showing in like the clips that auto-played as you scrolled across. And so I do remember them changing that at some point. But
and my Up Next right now with the most recent version works fine. I don't recall there being anything in the way of what I'm actually wanting to watch. So
the other thing is, of course, on Apple TV, if you use the trackpad to like go to the app, then that app's Up Next will show if it doesn't integrate with like the standard Apple's Up Next. So Plex, for example, has its own individual one. So if I highlight the Plex app, then the things showing at the top will be changed based on what's available in Plex versus everything else.
Yeah. So yeah, there often is some inbuilt tracking that you can do with that. Let's take a quick break, and then I'm actually going to go back to Vikrant's question because I forgot that there was a second part of that question. So we'll hit that, and then we may have someone in the calls who's looking to join us. If you are wanting to join us, dog in a hoodie, please hit the little button to raise your hand. If you're just a spectator, then you don't need to hold your hand up. But if you actually do have a question, then go ahead and hit that little button that says raise my hand. And that way we know that you are hoping to have your question answered. If you out there are hoping to have your question answered, call.twit.tv is where you go. There you will be able to join a Zoom call and hang out and hopefully have your question answered live on the air. But it's time for a quick break so I can tell you about Melissa, who are bringing you this episode of Ask the Tech Guys. Digital onboarding and ID verification, it's a necessary tool to reduce fraud, to improve customer engagement, and to ensure peace of mind. Melissa verifies the authenticity of ID documents and allows customers to securely submit their identity information anytime, from anywhere, and on their preferred device from an easy-to-use mobile app. There are 4 things to consider when looking for a digital onboarding and ID verification service. There's ID check. So today, machine readable zone, or MRZ, and optical character recognition, OCR, technologies, they instantly identify document types such as passports, driver's licenses, and other country IDs. In this step, your solution should also extract client data and populate data into your relevant systems like CRM platforms without having to worry about manual entry. There's also a biometrics check. To make sure your prospective customer is who they say they are, biometric checks can use smart facial recognition and comparison algorithms to recognize a match between a selfie and an ID image. This check should distinguish changes like facial hair, makeup, hairstyle, and more. There's also the liveness check. Am I working with a zombie here? No. Liveness is about making sure that the person is actually there and present for that moment. So it works along with the biometrics check. This check determines if the person behind the device they're using to onboard is live instead of a static image. It distinguishes eye movement and other small little changes to ensure the user's authenticity so that someone's not just holding up a photo of someone else to try and get that verification. And then there's also compliance reporting. Make sure your digital onboarding partner keeps full audit trails and customer due diligence reports. These reports are critical for your business and should be organization controlled, with the ability to evaluate anytime you want. Along with compliance reporting, you should be able to review and approve customer submissions with ease. You can get all of this and more with Melissa's digital onboarding and verification services. Since 1985, Melissa has specialized in global intelligence solutions and continually undergoes independent security audits to reinforce its commitment to data security, privacy, and compliance requirements. They're SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR compliant, so you know your data is in the best hands. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit. And of course, thank you, Melissa, for sponsoring this week's episode of Ask the Tech Guys. All right, back from the break, we are here for Ask the Tech Geeks, a very special episode of Ask the Tech Guys where Rosemary Orchard is joining us here in person. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for wearing some bunny ears to honor this Easter Sunday as we record this episode.
Why not?
And we've had some great questions so far. We've talked about sort of speeding up our lives, making our lives better with help. And I wanted to, before we go into this question, there was somebody who, I think it was even last week, they had written in and they were having a problem with their email. And so their email was not working as they expected. Every time they opened their email on their phone, it wasn't syncing properly with what their Mac was showing or their PC was showing.
Oh, yeah.
And they would try to move files around, and it was just all this nightmare. And the solution ended up being that they were using POP, an older email technology, and not IMAP, a newer email technology.
Yeah.
So I heard back from that listener. We said, hey, switch to IMAP. And yes, Scooter X, POP versus IMAP. And they wrote in once, sort of the day of, to say, hey, it looks like things are working. They wrote back about a week later and said, ever since I switched to IMAP, everything's been exactly as I wanted. So this is my little PSA that if you are logged into your email accounts on your different devices using POP for email, it may be time to make that switch to IMAP. And depending on what your email provider is, it's probably as simple for you as searching insert name of email provider.
You probably don't
IMAP.
even need to go searching. All you need to do is add the account again, maybe remove it first and then add it a second time to your device, because as your device goes through setting it up, it should automatically detect the best settings. And so especially if you're using, one of the more popular email providers, such as say Fastmail, Google Mail, Office 365, that sort of thing, then it should go through and just set things up so that you don't have that horrible thing of there's an email on this device, but it's not on that device. Wait, where did it go? Why isn't it there? Because I know for a while my mom was absolutely adamant. It was a different thing. She was adamant that she needed a different iMessage ID on her iPad to her iPhone because she didn't want messages going to one when she wanted them going to the other. But the problem with that was then we would just reply and say, yeah, okay, I'm on my way to the train station to pick you up, because she was one person as far as we were concerned. And they would go to her iPad and she wouldn't know that we were going to the station to pick her up or whatever. And so, yeah, that was very frustrating. But similarly to that, letting your device go through the best settings, unless you have a very, very niche specific edge case, that's probably the best thing to do. And it will just get it set up right for you.
So yes, there you go. Now, the second question from Vikrant via email says, my dad is hard of hearing, but refuses to wear a hearing aid. When I speak with him over a video call, he cannot hear me well, even after cranking the volume all the way up, both on the phone and the headset. Is there an external headset amplifier? Currently, the headset is connected to the phone using the 3.5 millimeter port. I am envisioning a small amp that goes in between, meaning this amp has a 3.5 millimeter in from the phone and 3.5 millimeter out. This will go to the headset. Any suggestions or recommendations? Vikram, there are quite a few of these devices that are available. And let's see, there's one that Leo recently recommended, and I wish I could remember off the top of my head, but I'm having trouble recalling what it is. But even if you just did a search for headphone amplifier iPhone or headphone amplifier iOS, you'd be able to find some different options. But there are, as Rosemary I think is going to point to, some settings adjustments that you can make.
Yeah, there are. And what you can do actually on your iPhone or an iPad or Mac is in the settings app, system settings on macOS, under accessibility, there are a number of options here which may be useful. I know you said your dad refuses to wear a hearing aid. But if you could maybe talk him into a made-for-iPhone hearing aid, then I think that might actually be a very good idea, because there is an entire section in here for hearing devices where you can set things up. I don't have a hearing aid, so I don't have those options. But under audio-visual, there are some other things which may help. So if your dad is harder of hearing in one ear than the other, then what you could do is perhaps either use mono audio, which will make sure that the same audio output goes to both left and right devices, or you could change the balance so that it is more to the left or to the right as is appropriate, so that can help. The other thing is, if he isn't using something like noise canceling on AirPod Pros, and he has headphones that can do noise canceling, is to use that noise canceling feature, because getting rid of the other noise around should hopefully help him hear what is going on, so that he is then going to be focused on just your voice and what you're saying. Similarly, on your end, when you are speaking, making sure that you are using voice isolation on your device will help to make sure that there aren't other sounds coming in, maybe from children playing, people running around, that really cute dog that's, somewhere near you that's playing, who's absolutely adorable. There happens to be a dog in the studio today. She's adorable. I love her. If she goes missing, she's in my handbag. They're, doing those things will help. And also, don't forget that you can also get hearing aids over the counter now with Made for iPhone here in the US. So that may be, especially if cost is something that he's concerned about, that may be an option to be worth exploring, and maybe focusing on the Made for iPhone part. The fact that these are like AirPods, but even better, would be really,
don't even
really
call them
nice.
Hearing aids. They're earbuds, Dad.
Yeah, they're custom earbuds for you, so that you can hear really well. And the fact that they happen to be hearing aids makes everyone in the family happy, and he's going to be happy because he can hear. So fingers crossed, Vikram, you can actually convince your dad to do something, but there's some settings and some devices there that can help.
Beautiful. And I wanted to give an update. AZ Neil went through, did that removal, and now the weather the weather forecast is working. So we always love to hear that whenever that takes place. So
that is really good.
Again, that is for everybody out there then. If you're having trouble where you're getting that notification, something about it not having a shortcut, or I need you to create a shortcut.
Was unable to run, something like that from your HomePod or from an iOS or macOS, iPadOS, Apple TV device, whatever. Check
it and make sure that you've got the shortcut. And if you have the shortcut and it's an app that you've deleted, that could be the issue there. All right. I know here in a minute, I'm going to head over to Radio Corner and show off a little product. But before we do that, let's go to one more question here via email. Our hooded dog friend has not raised a hand, so I think they're just spectating. Sometimes we get folks who like to watch the show from Zoom. That's at call.twit.tv. You're totally welcome to hang out there. Sadly, I have not seen. We usually have a truck driver who joins us for Ask the Tech Guys, and will sit in the Zoom and has their phone up on the dash.
Oh, nice!
And so then you kind of get to see the truck sort of rumbling and driving through these different areas. So I hope they're okay.
I'm missing out on an experience.
Yeah, so exactly. So I hope they're okay, because I have not seen them the past 2 weeks. But let's go to the question that comes in from John. John has written in and said, hi, Mikah and Rosemary. I recently updated my 2020 MacBook Pro 13 from Catalina to Ventura. My system immediately slowed down. Mm-hmm. Before the update, the system was very snappy, but now it thinks about commands for about 2 seconds before responding. Is this a common result, or is it possible that malware entered my system at the same time as I updated? John.
Well, I mean, my question is, how long has it been since the update was installed?
Yep.
Because there's a whole bunch of indexing that goes on after you do a big macOS update.
Can you explain indexing?
Well, indexing is essentially your computer needs to know where all the bits and the bytes and the files and the folders and the applications are so that it can do things. So, for example, if like me, you were to use an app from your keyboard to open apps, so you could use Spotlight using Command Space, for example. Then when you type Command Space and you start typing things, those results that come back, they're the results of everything on your computer being indexed. And with Ventura, there's more things that are being indexed than there were with Catalina. For example, shortcuts are part of this. So if you have, I don't know, say 1,600 something shortcuts on your devices, like me, then it's going to have to go through and index all of those as well. And the other thing is there's some apps that just need a bit of time to update. For example, photos, if it has to go through and reorganize a bunch of photos for you, it's going to be taking a while to do that. So if you haven't, since the update, just kind of left your Mac plugged in for a while, so, you know, ideally not shut down. You want to have been logged in so that you've got into File Vault so that it can actually do this stuff, because File Vault, that's macOS's native disk encryption, will, you know, once it's locked, it can't do anything. It needs to have unlocked your disk so that it can go through and do a bunch of stuff. So you may just want to leave it plugged in overnight, maybe for a day or so. You haven't said how big your hard drive or SSD is. So especially if you've got a lot of data, it's going to take a little while for it to do that. And then, of course, the other thing is just make sure you've done things like empty the trash and stuff like that.
Yes.
Because if you've got, and of course, desktop files, having a bunch of files on your desktop doesn't do it so much anymore. But a long time ago, having a lot of desktop files could crash your system. This was Mac and Windows, I remember. So definitely worth, if you've got, you know, just a bunch of stuff dumped on your desktop, huge amounts of things in the trash. Photos trash is separate, don't forget. Then just going through emptying trashes and clearing stuff out. And if you're still having problems, there is a really great app from MacPaw, makers of Setup. We mentioned Gemini earlier on the show. They also have Clean My Mac.
Yes.
And that can go through and just do a little bit of tidying up. But if you haven't just left it plugged in for a day or so, you know, after you've logged in once, it doesn't have to stay awake for that entire time, to be clear. It just has to have been like logged in, so it's not like been shut down and locked out.
And for folks, I think that folks were joking in the chat, but at the same time, I do want to be aware of folks who are not as techie. When Rosemary's talking about being plugged in, she's specifically talking about a device that has a battery in it, that you're putting wall power into it, not just the battery. Because with these devices, they have lots of different power saving things that they do whenever you are not charging it. So obviously, a Mac that's plugged into the wall, like a Mac Studio or a Mac Mini or an iMac, she's not talking about keeping that plugged in. She's specifically talking about battery. Yes,
I would hope that you would plug those in. Please do plug those in. Otherwise, they're not going to work. And if you don't have it on like a surge protector as well, then do me a favor, and free advice for everybody. If you don't have a surge protector connected to like your computers, just please go grab one and just chuck it in there. It's well worth it. But yeah, he's specifically mentioned a MacBook Pro here. So make sure you've got that little power cable plugged into your device so that it is actually charging, so that, And John has just said it has been over a month. That sounds a little suspect to me, so I definitely look at running something like Clean My Mac.
Yes.
And Apple also has some support pages on doing some maintenance on your machine, so I'll make sure if I can find some links to those.
That'd be great. Ultimately, I don't think it's malware.
No, I very much doubt it is.
Let me be clear. I don't think that it was malware that was installed when you did the update specifically. If you got the notification and you went into system settings, which at the time I believe was still called system preferences, and did the update through that method, then you did not have malware installed instead. Now, if you just went to some website and it was like, it's time to update to the latest version of macOS, and then you clicked on that, maybe you did install some malware. But if there is malware on your machine, it's not because you did an update, it's because it came through a separate means. In any case, give Clean My Mac a try as a third-party solution, because Clean My Mac also has a malware detecting scan built into it.
Yeah.
You have actually inspired and that's at cleanmymac.com. You have inspired a little bit of a rant that I completely forgot to have a couple of weeks ago. So I had a family member who she and her other family members had gotten new iPhones.
Okay.
And they went to the carrier store They didn't go to the Apple store. They went to a carrier store through the carrier that she subscribed to. And they got their new phones. And while they were there, the agent told them, this makes me so angry. It's so stupid. Told them, whatever you do, never, ever, 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 ever plug in your device and charge it overnight.
Oh my God. No. This is when it does all the backups and the updates.
They said,
oh no, that's a terrible piece of advice.
If your phone gets to 100% and it's left overnight, it's going to ruin the battery. It's going to heat up. It's going to this, that, and the other. And I had to have this moment of like calming down internally and going.
I don't think I'd have calmed down internally. I'd have just screamed and then asked where this store was.
Yes.
So that I could go and talk to their manager and ask them to educate their staff.
Because that means they're telling other people this as well. And
then they won't be doing automatic iOS backups.
Exactly.
They won't be doing the security updates automatically.
And then there was an anxiety that I could feel from this family member. That's what really got me, is like she had genuine concern. She is now spending these extra cognitive cycles thinking about, oh, do I need to unplug my phone really quick? Or, can it? So I want to make it clear. Almost every, and certainly with iPhone and iPad, I can speak with 100% certainty with iOS devices. But in almost every modern device, there is battery technology that is, in some cases, an actual chemical change, is in some cases a firmware change, is in some cases a software change that will help to keep that from ever being a problem. It used to be a long time ago that, yes, if you plugged something in and you kept it plugged in, it would try to charge past its full capacity, and that would cause the battery to get hotter, and then eventually you'd have a problem where the battery got so hot that it ruined the chemical nature of the battery, and it either shortened the life or completely just ruined the battery. Modern devices have so much smarts built in that keep it from doing that. And in fact, for most of our smartphones and mobile devices with batteries, along with, again, a bunch of other smarts that are kind of behind the scenes, it essentially charges the battery to 100% and then lets the battery discharge a little bit and then charges it and lets it discharge.
It doesn't even necessarily go straight to 100% either, Mikah, because if you charge your phone overnight, every night, at least on iOS, then it won't actually charge to 100% as soon as it plugs in. It knows you usually unplug your phone around whatever time you get up in the morning and unplug your phone, or take it off a MagSafe charger or a wireless charger, whatever charging method you use, and it will wait until before then to finish charging. It even does this on the Mac. And there's an option in the battery settings where you can say, no, I just continue charging to 100%. I have just double checked. This feature is built into Android as well. It's called adaptive battery.
Beautiful.
It does the same thing. Also, on an iPhone, just to remind folks, under settings in battery, you can actually see what your battery health is like. So if I just share this so that folks can actually see that, and then that would probably be helpful. But yeah, there's this option here where I can show my battery percentage, which then actually tells me the exact percentage inside the little battery icon. It's then got a whole section on battery health and charging. So I've got 97% of my capacity, and I have optimized battery charging turned on. Now, if you're here in the US, you'll also have something called clean charging, where it can try and tie in and use clean energy tariffs as well. My region is set to the UK, so I don't have that feature, sadly. But that's there. But you should, like, in general, folks, please do charge your devices overnight. The only time that I would say do not charge your device overnight is if you have a damaged cable, a damaged power brick, or you've bought some really dodgy cheap ones somewhere. And like if you've got a USB-C and it only charges when you like plug it in the right way around, please do me a favor right now. Take that USB-C cable, go to your nearest like waste recycling facility center and dispose of that cable, because that's not standard.
Yeah,
that's not to spec. If it only works one way around, that ain't a good USB-C cable.
Ooh, that actually is like kind of gives me heebie-jeebies a little bit.
Yes.
Oh, please don't plug that cable in.
Charge your devices overnight. They do updates. The duplicates feature that we talked about earlier on your iPhone and iPad, they happen overnight while your phone is charging. Like, they don't happen during the day when you're going to need to use your phone, because that's when it's going to run out of battery if you're trying to use it. So yeah, please, and also double check it with your friends and family members. Make sure.
Yeah, and seriously, as you're listening to this show, know, you check in, and if they've ever been told that, then you can let them feel free and feel okay with charging their. They don't need to wake up at 3 a.m. and unplug it because they're worried that it's going to damage the battery. No, it's fine. These devices are going to work just fine. In fact, as someone was pointing out in the chat, they have an iPad that's just literally always plugged in. I had the same thing for quite a while, where the iPad's purpose was just to be there, be on, and it worked just fine. And the reason why this was brought up for me is because the person she was almost felt like it was confirmed to her that this was the case, because when she brought it home that first day, her phone was hot. And so I was explaining why, the indexing thing. So that's what sparked that, is the reason why the
case.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? If you got a horrible, cheap, dodgy case on your phone, and if you've been using wireless charging and stuff like that, maybe you put it in the sun
if it's
to
a dark
charge
case,
it. Please don't charge your
sun.
devices in the sun. That's the only thing I'd say. Like, if you can move it somewhere slightly shadier to charge your device, that would be great. Like putting a phone in a black case with a black battery on it outside in the sun to wireless charge, that is a fast way to, well, probably have a very dodgy lithium-ion battery. Don't do that. But yeah. Just charging your device overnight is a good idea. And the sun is usually in overnight, so I suspect most folks will be fine there.
Yep. And just remember, every new update is going to come with some indexing, some syncing, some all sorts of background stuff. And then as the phone settles in, it'll chill out a little bit, both literally and figuratively.
Oh, yeah. And your phone also stops charging if it gets too warm, and will pop up a little notification to say that it will come back and finish charging when it cools down. If that does happen, folks, by the way, do just either unplug, don't use wireless charging for a little bit, maybe take the case off or something to let it cool down, but it will shut down automatically if it gets too hot, so you don't need to worry.
All right. Earlier this week on Tech News Weekly, I had come across a story regarding Tesla and how it was a Reuters report, and Reuters reported that Tesla employees were taking photos and videos captured by customers' Tesla cameras and sort of sharing them around in an internal messaging system, and in some cases making memes out of them, making fun of them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The car guy, Sam Abul-Samid, joined us for that episode, and was great because he popped in a little bit early, so he was able to provide a bit of a response and his thoughts on what was going on with this Tesla report. So take a listen.
To be honest, unfortunately, I'm not at all surprised that this is happening. It's happened before. It happened, I think, with Ring a few years back. Ring employees somewhere in Eastern Europe that were doing similar thing. They were tasked with doing labeling and annotation of video data from Ring security cameras, the doorbell cameras. They were sharing some of the video content that was being captured by these cameras. So in this particular instance, first to what you were saying earlier about, whether customers agreed to this. I haven't read the full terms and conditions of the Tesla connectivity agreement, but in general, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that when you agree to have connectivity in your vehicle, as part of that agreement, you are agreeing to share some of that data with the manufacturer, and they use it for. Most manufacturers use it primarily for product development to understand how.
Yeah, that's what I thought. They're trying to make it better down the road, right?
Exactly, and so it's imperative on the manufacturers to have some controls in place to make sure that anybody that within the company or within their contractors that has access to this data isn't misusing it. Now, to the specifics of this particular, of what's going on with Tesla, Tesla's got kind of an unusual situation because in most cases, for most manufacturers, most new cars have at least some cameras mounted on them for their driver assist systems. Every new vehicle built since I think 2016 has a rear backup camera. Most vehicles have forward facing cameras. Many of them have surround view cameras that when you put the car in reverse or you maneuver around at low speeds, you can get that bird's eye view so you can see what's around you. And that's really handy features to have. In almost all cases, as soon as you turn off the car, all those cameras turn off, the computers turn off, all that stuff turns off, and so nothing can be recorded. It sounds like from reading the Reuters story about this, which I'm assuming is probably the one you're referencing, or maybe another one, that what was happening here is the employees are looking at data that was captured from Tesla's Sentry mode. Tesla offers this additional mode called Sentry, which is basically a surround view security camera system for their vehicles, an anti-theft or anti-vandalism thing. So when you turn on Sentry mode, your cameras, the 8 cameras that are around the car, are on all the time and recording. I think there's a buffer, so it's like other security cameras. So they're not capturing all the data all the time because they don't have enough storage space. But they're looking for things that anything that might be a security issue. Somebody seems like they might be trying to break into the car or vandalizing the car. Then it will record some amount of video from the ring buffer.
I think what he said there at the beginning was what really, I just went, was he surprised? No, he was not surprised that this was the case. This, of course, I also found it surprising in the report that one of the cars that was looked in on ended up either belonging to or was someone who Elon Musk knew, because it was in the garage of Elon Musk, based on the fact that you could see this expensive water vehicle that Elon Musk had purchased. And so it's unclear if Elon knew that was going on. It was a little scary, the story, in terms of knowing that information was just so readily available. So please go check out that Tech News Weekly episode so you can learn about that and a whole lot more. Sam Abul Samid is there for that, but also we go into 3 or 4 different EV stories following that conversation. So I'm over here in Radio Corner because there's a product that I really wanted to talk about. For the longest time, I have had first USB-A chargers, right? I had, I can remember having this like 8-port USB-A charger, and I could, it was actually both a hub and a charger. So I could plug in some flash drives. I could stick in a hard drive if I wanted to, but then I could also charge different devices. At the time, it was like an iPod Nano with that device, and do all of that at once. And since then, I've gotten a few chargers, but they're always USB-C and USB-A if you've got sort of a multi-port layout. So it would be, 1 USB-C and 3 USB-A, or maybe you'd get 2 and 2, or in some cases, if it was just USB-C, it was just 2 USB-C. So I've wanted something where with these modern USB-C cables I have to be able to charge all of them. And Satechi came along and said, well, I've got that for you with this new 6-port GAN charger. And folks, this is a 200-watt USB-C charger. It's available for $149.99, so $150, and it is simply a USB-C charger for up to 6 devices at once. And what's awesome about this is that each of these ports is PD rated, so power delivery on all 6 of the ports. And it's got a big old honking plug on the back that you plug it into the wall. And depending on how many devices you have plugged in, it will change how it is able to output. So they've got this kind of matrix going where you can see how much power you're getting depending on what you have plugged in. So in any of these ports, if you're just plugged into one, then you can have, it's rather in the top 2, if you've got just one device plugged in, it's 140 watts max, so you can charge, a full-on laptop. In the third and fourth, it's 100 watts max. And then down in the fifth and sixth, it's 20 watts max. So you'd want to plug in something like an Apple Watch charger or another small device. If you've got two things plugged in at once, two devices plugged in at once, each of these top two can do 100 watts at the same time. So that's where it gets up to that 200 watts. If you've got something in 1 and 3, then it can do 100 watts. 1 and 4 obviously can do 100 watts because these are all 100 watts max. And then from that point on, you know, it can kind of break up. So if you've got something plugged into 1 and 5, for example, that top one's going to do a full 140 watts, and the bottom one can still do a full 20 watts. So even with two things plugged in, you're still getting the top-rated charges for each of these. And as you might imagine, as you add in more, then that top rate will go down. So if you've got, as they say, sextuple port output, then it works like this: 65 watts in the top, 45 watts in the second, and then 20 watts for 3 through 6. So even with all of these filled in, you're still getting 65 watts at the top end and then down from there. So you can do some pretty magnificent charging with this. Now, one of the things I like about Satechi is that they try to match the sort of overall design of Apple devices while not, they don't go with super premium materials. So this is, you know, like a plastic outer piece or plastic casing was the word I was looking for, but it's still very strong and it's very hefty for sure. And it still looks nice. So sitting next to, you know, your macOS devices, it still looks nice and kind of fits in with the overall look and feel of what you have. But even with that, they can, you know, not charge as much money because they don't go with those super, super premium materials. So this is meant to sit on its side, or if you'd like, you can use the included stand and have it sit facing sort of vertically. So you just take this and drop it into the included stand. And then here, and I'll show that from the top there. So you're able to plug things into the front of it. And yeah, it's quite nice to be able to just have one device that I can plug into the wall, run 6 different things from it, and know everything's getting the charge that I needed to get. Or, as I mentioned, if you just drop that down to 4, 3, 2, with 140 watts max coming out of that first and second port, you can get everything charged. And I think this is going to be a great thing to take on a trip where I can just have this and then the various cords that I need to charge everything else with. And that's one of the benefits, I think, as we make this overall shift to USB-C everything. It means that I can take something like this around and I know that it's going to work as I expect it to. And I also think about international travelers, right? Where you are going around and you don't have some sort of, a converter with you. Well, this has all of that technology built into it. So you could use this in Australia, and just as long as you have the adapter, you don't need to also have the converter to be able to charge those devices. So,
yeah, what I really love about this Mikah is also the fact that it just uses a standard C7 cable. And so that's the figure of 8 headed cable. So what I actually do when I travel, because I have other Satechi chargers, and the only thing that I'm currently mad about is Mikah didn't tell me about this early enough for me to order one. So this isn't quite C7, this is the Clover head, but what I usually do is I just buy another one of those cables, because then you don't need an adapter. You just plug in the US cable or the UK cable or the EU cable. And especially when you're worrying about, adapters. For some reason, I always have this problem here in the US, Mikah. Like my adapters fall out of the wall in the hotels. The sockets are super loose. So I travel with a small extension lead. But yeah, this is a C5, C6 cable, thanks to the chat room for that. And the other brilliance is because it's a removable if you happen to have a pet, for example, who thinks that cables are delicious. I sincerely hope not. Or you maybe just run over these cables with your desk chair every once in a while. If the cable goes, you can replace it and you've still got that charger. So I definitely like that. I also wanted to mention, somebody in the chat room was saying it's kind of difficult with multi-port chargers to keep track of like what ports you can use. For me, I have a very, very simple rule. I know what the top side is and I know what the bottom side is. Biggest device plugs into the top, smallest device plugs into the bottom. So if I'm charging something like my Hydrate Spark water bottle, that goes into the bottom port. But if I'm charging my Mac, that goes into the top, and then I just fill in between based on the size of the device, or
that is smart.
Whatever it is. So yeah, you can even get like those colored dots. Mikah, you've got a great recommendation for the dots that you can put over the lights on cables or devices to sort of block them out.
Light dims. Yeah.
Yes, that's the ones. But if you have a spare one of those, maybe just pop it on top, or just those cheap colored dots that you can get from like the stationery store. Like I'm sure Target has them or something. You know, maybe do themes, Easter bunny ones.
Yeah, you'd switch it out every season. I love that idea of just thinking about the biggest device plugs into the top, the smallest device plugs into the bottom, and you just kind of fill in from there. And a lot of times, and of course, this isn't the case with every device. Typically, price can factor into, if you've paid a good price for it, it often does have technology built in that will only take as much power as it needs, as opposed to it being an issue. But it's still best to try to match as close as possible. So something like the Apple Watch charging puck, plugging it into that 140 watt, it's just overkill, right? So, and it's only going to take what it needs out of that. So it's worth just keeping that port available for something like, your laptop, particularly if it's a MacBook Pro, because not even this MacBook Air needs 140 watts of power to be. I think it can get away with 65 watts and still be able to charge, if I remember correctly. So yeah, that is the Satechi 200 watt USB 6-port GaN charger, gallium nitride charger, $149.99 in US dollars, but it looks like it's available in Australia, the EU, and the UK as well. Oh, it's so sad to see EU and UK separated like that.
Well, I mean, they would have to be anyway because they use different plug types. But as I was just trying to find a link for the chat room, Europe doesn't have just one plug type. It's very complicated. I was actually staying in a hotel in London just before I came out here, and I went to plug something into the wall by my bed, and they only had a very weird European plug that I've seen in like a really old hotel in Italy. There. So I ended up plugging like my phone, like my charger in like outside of the bathroom and using a 3-meter cable to get it to charge at the end of my bed. So other bonus with this charger, by the way, is the fact that you have that cable between the actual charger and the wall. So you don't have the whole weight of the charger like hanging out of the wall. It's then, you can put it somewhere that's more convenient for you. So I really like that. I'm going to have to get one. I've officially signed up to be emailed when they're available in the UK.
Nice. All right, I'm going to head back from Radio Corner so we can continue on with the show. So let us it's time to take a break. And then we're going to come back with another great question that one of our listeners sent in. But I want to take a break to tell you, do I love them? It's Electric E-Bikes who are bringing you this episode of Ask the Tech Guys. There's no better way to get outside and enjoy the spring season than with a electric e-bike. Transform your trips across town or to the beach into a carefree and fun adventure with fun, fast, and foldable electric e-bikes during their Ready, Set Spring sale. From quick store trips to outdoor adventures, electric e-bikes created a mode of transportation that anyone can ride. With quality, feature-filled models financed as low as $73 per month, your adventures won't cost a fortune. They include a powerful, removable battery, a bright LCD display, 7-speed gearing, and 5 levels of pedal assist to power your ride. Plus, you can lower your gas costs and reduce your carbon footprint. If you're watching, are seeing Leo driving around on pedaling around on electric e-bike. And I also had the opportunity to try out these electric e-bikes, and they're so much fun. The wind was in my hair. We were riding around in the studio parking lot, but also on the road, and it was just delightful. The pedal assist is really great in terms of not just its like responsiveness, but also if you crank up the speed a little bit, it could really get you zipping along, and that was a lot of fun. And I don't know, there was just something exhilarating about it. And I think about, you may want to ride a bike, but you get to a part where there's this huge hill and you go, why did I ever make the decision to do this? But to have that pedal assist technology there to help you get going along. And right now on the video, we're seeing Leo, it was in his trunk. It was all folded up and he's able to pull it out and unfold it and adjust it exactly as he wants it, just right. And then lock things in and get rolling with the electric e-bike. It's so much fun to, again, zip about with that special pedal assist technology. You also, I should mention, can make it your own because electric e-bikes offer a wide range of customizable and adjustable e-bike options to accommodate an array of different lifestyles, including rides from the effortlessly fun XP Lite to a highly capable cargo e-bike. That's what you saw Leo riding on, the Expedition, with that cargo rack in the back. And you can join more than 250,000 dedicated riders on the road so far, and it can become your adventure companion. Roam freely and reach up to 28 miles per hour with the twist of a throttle or next level pedal assist. You can add cargo baskets or bags, comfort upgrades, and even passenger accessories to certain e-bike models. They cost way less than the competition. They're foldable, they ship free, and they come fully assembled, so you don't have to worry about, how do I get this all set up? That was a fun part, riding the bike, and there were some vehicles behind us, and I didn't feel like I was causing too much of an issue because of how fast you can get going with those electric e-bikes. It was a lot of fun. Start your next adventure with electric e-bikes. Ready, set, spring sale. Visit electricebikes.com to learn more and explore the new Expedition cargo e-bike and all of the other epic models Electric has to offer. That's LECTRIC ebikes.com. electricebikes.com. Thank you, Electric E-Bikes, for sponsoring this week's episode of Ask the Tech Guys. All right, it's time to get back to the show. This very special Ask the Tech Geeks episode. Rosemary Orchard is here in person for this episode. We've had some fun answering questions thus far, showing off some gadgets and gizmos, providing some advice. And now it is time. A question has come in from Frank. Frank writes in and says, I am a regular listener of your network and always appreciate the helpful tips and solutions you provide. I am writing to seek your guidance on an issue I'm facing with my 2 MacBook laptops. And this is a really interesting support question. I own a MacBook Air M2 and a MacBook Pro M2 Max. Recently, I used Migration Assistant to set up the MacBook Pro, and now both laptops have identical content. However, I would like to ensure that any changes I make on one computer are automatically synced to the other. This includes installing new setup apps, adding fonts, configuring new email accounts in Outlook, adding Bluetooth devices, and even syncing settings for applications like Ultimaker, Cura, and Bartender. My goal is to have a seamless experience between the 2 devices, so when I switch from one to the other, all my changes and customizations are available without any manual intervention. I understand that certain solutions might not cover every aspect, but I am looking for the most efficient way to achieve the synchronization. Could you please provide some guidance on the best approach to accomplish this? Any advice, any tools, any services that you can recommend would be greatly appreciated.
This is a tricky one, Micah,
very tricky.
Because there isn't really a sync all of Mac feature that's available. If you were using Mail on the Mac, then when you add an account on one Mac, then it will add the account on the other. You just need to re-add the password. But syncing everything across, that's pretty tricky. And I mean, there's some things that you can do if you're using iCloud or Dropbox or both. Then you can make sure that all of the things are saved into those folders so that you don't have anything that's not in iCloud, anything that's not in Dropbox, and so on. But syncing everything's pretty tricky. But I do have an app recommendation that I'd like to make to help with things like installing fonts and so on. And this app is called Transloader. So Transloader for Mac is just a handy little app which lets you download something to another Mac. And so you can, when you go to download something, just right click and then send it off to the other Mac. This then lets you basically just say, okay, so if I'm going to download something, so if I just pop open, for example, Safari, and then I were to download this image, then when I actually use the share option, I can actually download it with Transloader. I don't have the extension set up for the images at the moment. But when I download it with Transloader, then it can just be sent to this device and another device, which is very useful because, I have my work machine, I have my personal machine, I have my MacBook. So when I want things in all the places, then that's what I do. The other thing you can do, which I do like to do, is with Setup, what I have done is I actually tend to go through and favorite all of the apps that I have installed on my Mac, because there is a little filter for on this Mac. And so when I install something, because a lot of the time I'll install something and go, I'm just trying this out, I'm not sure I'm going to keep this. But when I install something and I'm actually going to keep it and I'm going to run it, then I favorite it. Because then when I go into the favorites section, then I can actually just click install all. And that's a little thing that's right there. I can't remember if they added that in response to something loads of people asked for, if it was just something that I messaged them and was like, hey, it would be really useful if you had this. But the folks at Setup do great work. Awesome. So the fact that there's an install all button there is worth knowing about. The other thing is when it comes to installing things like fonts and stuff like that, if you use Transloader to download it, then it can automatically do things with certain files. And if it can't do something, then maybe Hazel from Noodlesoft can do the rest. I think the best thing to just do at the moment, though, is just admit that there are going to be some things that don't sync, and be prepared for that, and don't expect everything to just happen. Because it's not going to. It's going to be very painful.
It's going to be a multi-service solution where, and not everything's going to work in the end. Because you can use synced desktop and documents folder with iCloud, so at least those two folders can be synced between two Macs. I use that feature. I know a long time ago people were really not comfortable with letting Apple do that syncing, but now it works just fine. So anything that I have on one desktop eventually makes it to my other Mac, and so I've got those files there, or in my documents folder. And then when it comes to the other folders, files, features, you can, as Rosemary's pointed out, you can do some sort of download syncing. And you can sync folders, but to actually get every single thing would require having, a lot of people are talking about in the chat, you'd essentially have to have some very enterprise software to pull that off. Some mobile device management that is next level. So you'd be paying a lot of money just to sync two Macs together, where it kind of is just imaging the device between two places and getting it as much as possible. I think ultimately, it's just not the way that most people are using their devices. And so because of that, it's not a solution that Apple has made available. Yeah. I would continue to search for things, and will listen to feedback and hear what other people have to say.
It would definitely be worth considering using the Mail app instead of Outlook, just because it does have that feature of automatically adding accounts, and it will pop up a notification. Actually, technically, it pops up an alert. The difference between a notification and an alert is an alert stays until you dismiss it, and a notification sort of pops in and then pops out again. And so it pops up an alert when you add a new account on one device and prompts you to add it on another device. So that's certainly worth considering for those benefits, if not for the fact that, Mail's pretty great, actually, to be honest. I really like it as an app.
Yeah, I'm thinking if there was some way to sync one of the system folders. That just is going to get so messy.
From personal experience, as a developer, so I have a lot of things set up in various weird and wonderful places that I do need to sync and configure, but it's syncing, not syncing as in like everything automatically happens. So I have scripts that will take everything that I've installed with Homebrew and dump out a list for me, but I will not like automatically install that on another device. I will have to like run the command to do that. you can sync some of these system settings around, but a lot of applications, for example, PopClip, a great app that I use on my Mac, actively discourages syncing that system folder because it will end up breaking things at some point when you've got two devices that simultaneously edit something, and then something goes wrong and it kind of all explodes. It just doesn't work very well. It's like if you have a shared file in Dropbox and you try and edit it offline and two people edit it at the same time and then the internet connects, it all kind of blows up in your face, and that's not good. So yeah, definitely worth keeping an eye out for these things, and maybe look for alternative apps that can sync.
Yeah, I will say I know John Slanina and Leo Laporte both use an application called SyncThing, or a service called SyncThing, and that can do some pretty smart syncing. Yeah. So give it a shot. See if that would work for you, or get you. Maybe you could at least sync the fonts folder with SyncThing. Yeah. Get to some level where most of it is happening between the two, and where it's all working together to. Yeah.
I mean, I think with a little bit of smart setup, you could definitely do some things. So, for example, if Hazel watches your downloads folder and it looks for any font files, it could copy that to a fonts folder in iCloud or Dropbox. And then whenever a file appears in the fonts folder, it could be automatically installed from Hazel as well. So that's definitely a recommendation that's worth looking into. But yeah, there's going to be some pain points, but fingers crossed you can get the big things working.
Yeah. All right, we do have a caller. I'm going to wait for them to join the call so I can ask their name. The name that's currently provided is not a human name. So we'll bring them into the on-air room. They'll get the little prompt, and then we can go from there. So once they've joined, then we can say hello. All right. Hello. Where are you calling from, and how should we refer to you?
Hello, my name is Jay Mullane, also known as Wise. I'm also located outside of Durham, North Carolina.
All right, welcome to the show. I think we'll call you Wise. I like that. That's a good one.
Hi.
Yeah, everybody call me Wise. That's my last name.
All right.
Thank you, Mikah, and thank you, Rosemary. I have a question. It just popped in my head while I was listening to the program. I'm doing, and since you mentioned this on another program, you were talking about Clubhouse on another show earlier. I use Clubhouse because it allows a lot of media production with Club Deck. Okay. And I'm using an old MacBook Pro, but I want to upgrade. I was thinking about getting the newer MacBook Pro M1s, but I know you said you love your M1 Air. So I wasn't sure which one I need to upgrade to. I would like to keep it on a smaller budget. Yes. Because I got my iPad Mini. I mean, my iPad Pro Max. And I use that a lot, but I didn't want to get a big laptop if I can just use a MacBook Air for something like Clubhouse and run all your production like Loopback and all that stuff that allow me to play a lot of media files. Yeah. So I would like to love your suggestions on that.
So I am using it's the M2 MacBook Air right now, and hands down, I would almost recommend this machine to any person who asked me what Mac laptop they should get. This thing has been an absolute powerhouse. It is incredibly OP, as the kids say, overpowered. It will run multiple applications. Oh, maybe it's not what the kids say. I'm getting some shakes and laughs in the background. But anyway, it's very overpowered. It is so quick to launch things. If you are, wanting, I've just now learned about this Club Deck. If you're wanting to run Club Deck and be able to, as you mentioned, pull up some media files, that is still not so much that it's going to, slow everything down. I mean, I've regularly got so many different tabs open. I've run some AI engines on this M2 MacBook Air and done, some really deep processing, and I've had absolutely no issues with it. And the other thing is, I never really, they provide me power if I need it, but I never really have to have this thing plugged in whenever I'm doing this show on the weekends, which is not something I can say for devices I've had in the past. So yeah, if you're looking for something that's going to be more than just having, that iPad, but you don't want to Supermax break the bank, as long as the smaller screen is okay for you, or maybe you're plugging it into something that has a bigger screen.
I do.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I really think you're going to be happy with the M2 MacBook Air. I'm actually just had a family friend who was asking their daughter's going to be going to college, what laptop should I get? M2 MacBook Air, absolutely. It's just, it's so light. It's great. And your thoughts too.
If I didn't already have this M1 MacBook Pro and I was in the market for a laptop, I would be getting the M2 Air. I bought this because I needed battery life on a trip to New York. And I needed to be able to do development the entire way there. Mm-hmm. And this, on the way here, I had an 11-hour flight from London to San Francisco. This battery lasted the whole way.
Wow.
On this. I have no doubts that the M2 Air would be a fabulous device. And also, it has the slightly bigger screen now, doesn't it?
Yes. Because of the new bezels and everything.
So, definitely worth it. And I personally think that it's a great device. And don't forget, of course, with Apple, if you do buy it and you give it a shot, then you do have a 2-week return policy where you can take it back and then pay the difference to get the Pro instead if you do need to do that. Fingers crossed you wouldn't need to, and I wouldn't encourage people to do this to borrow a device or anything. But if you buy it thinking that, this should do everything I need, and then you find out that maybe it doesn't, then you can certainly, return it and upgrade if needed. So.
Yeah, it's and running. I've run some different shows that I was recording that required loopback, required a few of those those audio hijack tools and Rogue Amoeba. That's what I was going for. Rogue Amoeba tools, and it ran them like a champ. So I honestly, this is one of those machines where I kind of sometimes want to look at Apple and go, "Did you mean to release it for this price? Did you mean for this to be what it is?" Because it's sometimes so shocking. I know I geek out about it a lot, but genuinely, I have never liked a device from Apple more than I like this MacBook Air, and I've had a lot, and it's just it's really great. So I mean that's a great question too, because there are so many different options right now, and when you know that you're trying to do some sort of power user stuff. Do I need to spring for that extra? And Apple's just done such a great job with Apple Silicon that I see no reason to push people into something more if they don't need it. But as Rosemary points out, really put it to its test in that first week and a half, and then you've got a few days left to go take it back or send it back. And Apple's really good about if it is a send it back, if you do it right at the end of the 2 weeks, then you can still if you're getting that in place and say, okay, actually no, the MacBook Pro is what I need to go with. But I don't think you'll end up needing to do that with this.
One more question.
Yeah.
With that being said, I do little reels and stuff, video reels, so I know it won't take that much power. But if I get a gig to do a large video and I had to do a large content or something like that, do you still recommend that type of laptop as well?
I've not done a whole lot of video editing on it, but here's what I'll tell you. When I used to have a MacBook Pro that was before Apple Silicon, and I needed to edit some quick video clips, I would go to my iPad with Apple Silicon, which was what it basically was at the time, and edit it there because it would transcode and export the video faster than if I was doing it on a spinning, on a Mac that had an Intel chip in it. That what I'm thinking of spinning, I'm thinking of the fans, and it would get hot and it would take forever and it would be an issue. So given that I was doing it on an iPad instead because it was faster, then you can expect, I think, the same thing here. I think the only problem where the only thing where I could see that crop up is if you're doing multi-video. So you're trying to, you've got 3 different angles and you're trying to layer those all at the same time and cut between with the multi-video footage, and you're doing you're adding a bunch of effects on it as well. Once you start to stack up a bunch of stuff, then yes, you might start to see the limits of it. But if it's, you're doing some basic cuts and you are occasionally layering video, I don't think you'll have an issue. I
mean, the other thing is with this as well, it depends on what applications you're using for this stuff, because some applications which are made for the Mac will work much better on the Mac than something that was made for Windows and has a Mac version where they kind of just threw it in a wrapper and it's not a real Mac app. So if your tools, it's certainly worth trying that in like the first 10 days that you have the machine with, even if it's just a fake file that you're editing, or do something that you've previously done again if you have the time or similar, and just open up something huge and see how it handles it. But I somehow think that you'll be impressed with the M2 Mac, and also that thin. The MacBook Air is so thin and light. I'm looking at Mikah's right now.
Yeah,
and it's like,
it looks gorgeous.
It really does. It not only looks gorgeous, but it's also so thin and light. Like mine, like if we hold both of them up, like it's, there's...
She does have a lot of ports, which I'm a little jealous of that HDMI port on the side.
Yeah, like I have to say the ports are handy. I also have a little stand on the bottom of mine, so I can prop it up if I need to. But I don't, because this desk has a nice slope built in. But yeah, if I didn't already have this, I'd be getting one of those, no question.
Especially if you've got a fast Wi-Fi or internet connection at home. Or, let me rephrase that. If you've got a router that has the most recent or a pretty recent version of Wi-Fi, then airdropping files between two devices can go pretty quickly. So if you're working with video files, if you're kind of concerned about that, because a lot of people go, well, I've only got the two ports on the side. I find that in some cases, AirDrop can be just as fast to get those files over quickly. Eventually you may decide then I'm going to invest in something like a CalDigit dock that I can plug into the side. And now suddenly I've got every single port I could ever need and then some right there as well. So yeah, you've got options to add on to the experience. And I think that would still keep you under the price of the MacBook Pro that you would want to get if you were going that way. So yeah, I really think that you'll be happy with the MacBook Air. And, again, I encourage put it to the test, run it through its paces. And if it's not right for you, then that's when you can decide to make that jump.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. I appreciate you, Mikah. Rosemary, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for calling in, Wise.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Great question.
All righty. Let's see. I thought I had one other question here.
Well, we do have a question from the chat room, actually, with somebody who's currently not able to use Zoom, but they were wondering if we would recommend buying an iPad Pro 11-inch or the M1 iPad Air, because they are so close together.
So similar.
And I mean, it's a really good question, because I have the 11-inch iPad Pro. I actually have it here it's oops, I've just thrown my Apple Pencil away, but I have it in the Magic Keyboard, which this is a Slick Wraps cover, mostly so that Mikah and I won't get confused between iPads today, next week, because we can guarantee we're both going to have our iPads out. So mine's going to be the pretty pink one. But they're so similar. And the other thing is, you wouldn't necessarily have to get the current generation of the iPad Pro. You could get one of the refurb models with the M1 in it, which would be potentially worth doing if you were looking at it from that. But I can't remember, Mike. It's the current iPad Air doesn't use the Apple Pencil 2, does it? It uses the Apple Pencil 1. Oh, wait, no. It's the standard iPad. Yeah. The standard iPad is the one that moved the camera to the top center, which meant that it can't have the magnetic Apple Pencil 2.
The iPad Air makes no sense. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. The iPad, I mean, if you want color, then yeah.
I just don't understand what its purpose is in the lineup, because you've got the standard iPad, you've got the iPad Pro, you've got the iPad Mini. What is your point, iPad Air? So it makes it confusing. It makes it hard to answer that question. It's got an M1 chip in it. It's got the newer rounded bezel. It's got Face ID. Wait, no, it doesn't. It uses Touch ID on
that's it. It's got the Touch ID in the power button on the end. Because this is what got me confused because my grandmother was asking for a recommendation for something. And what I'll just do a second is if I just pull up the Apple comparison website, then we can just take a look. So, I mean, if you want purple, you're going to have to go with the iPad Air, because it only comes in purple. But it's a slightly larger screen,
right? I think that's
with the ProMotion technology.
Yeah.
And the current iPad 11-inch Pro, if you just walk into the Apple Store and buy one, comes with the M2 chip. But you could definitely hit the refurb store. This is something I always recommend that folks do. is scroll down to the bottom of the Apple website. In this case, because I'm doing comparison, it's a long way down, and then click certified refurbished, because they often have devices, and if you can save some cash, then it's worth doing. And look at that, you can get a refurb 11-inch iPad Pro, second gen for $549 at the moment, in space gray, or silver. Both available. So yeah,
honestly, I guess what I would say is if you can afford it, go for the Pro for the sake of, especially if you're going for the M2, because you get a bigger screen and you get better display technology, and that's what the iPad is.
Yeah.
It is a
that's it.
Screen.
I remember. It's this Magic Keyboard. The difference is the Air uses the Magic Keyboard with the connectors at the bottom, right? Versus this one uses these connectors, or is it the iPad?
I think they both have the same connectors. Yeah,
it's so confusing now. Like, what is Apple doing? Why are they doing this to me?
So
I don't like that.
So go Pro if you can go Pro.
Yeah, if you can swing the Pro, swing Pro. But definitely check the refurb store, because there's some great options there, including current models by the looks of it. So yeah, worth considering. They do have the iPad Air in here as well. Make sure you check which generation it is you're buying. And also, bonus tip for folks, if you are looking for something that currently isn't in the refurb store, then there's this little website called refurb.me where you can sign up for refurb notifications from the Apple Store when something comes back in.
Well, that's handy. What a great little tip.
Yeah, it also works great for, this thing is not yet available on the Apple Store, on the Apple refurb store, but I want to know when it is. So that's what I use it for.
All right. Then another question we got in from Tony, who writes, I have a question about my iPhone 13 when I'm trying to reply back to a text. I have my earbuds on, I have my Apple Watch on, and I ask Siri to respond to a text. It tells me I need to unlock my iPhone first. What am I doing wrong here? I don't know. I think this could be in settings, and then we go down to privacy and security. No. We go down to Face ID and passcode, and then you type in your Face ID and passcode, and then you scroll down, and down at the bottom, there are some options that say allow access when locked. You need to make sure that reply with message is toggled on, so that even if your phone is locked, you are still allowed to reply with a message. That's what I'm guessing is probably at issue here.
I suspect that is the case. There is a setting in the notifications area where if you go into settings, notifications, and then under announce notifications, there's reply without confirmation. But that's just if Siri is confident that it's understood what you've, and Siri's now listening to me, that it's understood, then it'll just send before it because otherwise it does the thing where it reads back what it thinks you said, and then you go, no, I wasn't talking about chasing cats. I was talking about something else. It
Jason Katz.
Yeah, or Jason Snell, for example. That could be somebody. So yeah. I will never trust Siri enough to not have that on. Though my favorite is when it mispronounces your name. You are frequently Mikah.
Yeah.
Even though I've told it how to pronounce your name multiple times, you're often Mikah.
Yeah.
So if I'm driving, then it will go, Mikah, Sergeant, send you a text. I'm like, no.
It's like, no, that's not who that is. And then we'll go with one more question. This comes in from Claudia. And Claudia writes, I know how important two-factor is. I'm a disabled woman and I don't have a cell phone. My question is this: how can I use two-factor without a cell phone, and would it be easy for me to use? So there are some applications that will do two-factor authentication like Authy. And I will be honest, I'm not sure about where
Authy actually is not going to work in this case, because as far as I'm aware, you actually need a phone number to sign up to have an Authy account.
Right.
But the good news is services like 1Password do two-factor authentication. There's also a Google Authenticator app and a Microsoft Authenticator app, which should work without a cell phone number to sign up for. But
I can speak to 1Password. 1Password's accessibility mindedness is good. I can't speak to Google or Microsoft. I'm not sure how they are with those specific apps, but yes, I know that 1Password does a good job of making sure all of those are labeled. So if you're using a screen reader or something like that, you would be able to do this. And the good thing about 1Password is that often it will just automatically suggest to you, oh, I see that you're trying to set up two-factor authentication. There's the QR code on screen. Would you like me to go ahead and do that? And as a disabled person, you may also like that it automatically puts those numbers in for you, that you're not having to jump back and forth between the two. So there's now a link that will be in the show notes for 1Password's two-factor authentication support. And I should also mention our sponsor here on Twit, or for Twit in general, is Bitwarden, and Bitwarden also does offer some of the sort of autofill suggestions and options too. So those are worth checking out. And then yes, the good thing is, whenever you're talking about, Claudia, that you don't have a cell phone to do this, as we've discussed on the show in the past, it's honestly better if you're not doing two-factor authentication via a cell phone. You'd have to be very much targeted to be part of sort of the spoofing techniques that bad actors use to try to gain access to your account, but still, it's just not as secure as using an app to generate those two-factor authentication codes for you. So it's kind of, in a way, there is a blessing to not being able to use the phone to do that, because you want to use something that's a little bit more secure. Yes. And then the second part of Claudia's responses. My goddaughter is 8 and she has an iPad, but her friends are all on Android devices. My question is this: is there any way for her and her friends to communicate with each other without buying her a cell phone? Many ways. Yeah. I mean, it really depends. Like, the problem with kids is, what's the cool app right now? Because I'm pretty certain they've all moved on from Snapchat. But God knows what they're currently using. Google Docs. They're just typing back and forth in the Google Docs page. Yeah, that was a thing for a while. I know that. And also, it's definitely a regional thing, where different, especially across different countries, different people will use different things. Yeah, exactly. In WhatsApp Europe, everybody just uses WhatsApp. Yeah. That's what everybody uses, is the default communication method. If you ask somebody for their number and then you message them and you don't use WhatsApp, then most of the time they'll be like, why didn't you do that? Yeah. And the answer is usually, I went to use messages and saw you had a blue bubble. So messages is so much better. But yeah, it's Club Penguin. Yeah. It's, if they're using Club Penguin, Neopets, that was the thing when I was a kid. There we go. I'm aging myself massively. Maple Story. But yeah, honestly, it really depends. But a lot of this stuff will work on the iPad or the iPhone. And so, yeah, she should be good to go ahead and a third-party app would work. Especially if they're on Android, then Google, whatever Google's most recent chat app is. It's not Hangouts. It's not Voice that actually requires a SIM card to sign up. Oh, I think it's the most recent one's called, or a phone. We will be deleting this soon, is what I think the most recent app is called. Yeah, there's that. You should just call it Sunsetting. That's the name of the app. Yeah. No, but you find out what Android way they're messaging each other, and then you can get those emails, and then you can set it up where you're able to chat with them on whatever it is, Google Duo or whatever it is right now. This is where I need Jason Howell so I could ask him what it is most likely to be used. All right. With that, I believe we have reached the end of this episode of Ask the Tech Geeks, a very special episode this week. Rosemary Orchard, first of all, I want to thank you so much for being here in person, of all things. It's amazing. Well, I'm really glad I made it. And, I don't know, can I stay for Tuesday, Mike? Can we do iOS Today on Tuesday here? We can do iOS Today in person as well. That sounds better than me sitting in my hotel room and you sitting at home. Yeah, you're calling in from your hotel room. So, having your morning coffee from the, Yeah. So let me name some things, and then we'll ask where folks can find you online. But folks, I want to mention Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit. That is a place where you can go, twit.tv/clubtwit, to sign up to join the club. When you do, you get some pretty great things. Starting at $7 a month, $84 a year. Joining the club means you get access to every single Twitch show with no ads. So it's just the content, none of the ads, because you are, in effect, supporting the show. You also get access to the Twit Plus bonus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show, all sorts of fun stuff, including Twit events that occasionally take place. You can also join the Club Twit Discord server. That's a place where you can go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also many of us here at Twit. You can share animated images like Mashed Potato just did, where it's a bunny surprise for Easter. And it's just a fun place to share all sorts of back and forth conversations and talk about what you're up to, ask questions, occasionally get those answered there. And then you also get access to some Club Twit exclusive shows. That includes the Untitled Linux show, which has some of the most beautiful show artwork I've seen. You can also watch Hands on Windows, which is Paul Thurrott's Windows program, all about Windows tips and tricks. My show, Hands on Mac, which is a short format show that covers tips and tricks for Mac, iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, all those things. And the newly relaunched Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson is there in the club as well. So much fun to have you supporting us directly. Like, we thank you so much for that, and it means a lot to us, and it means we can keep on keeping on with all this stuff that we're doing. twit.tv/clubtwit. If you'd like to tune in and watch the show as we record it, you can go to twit.tv/live every Sunday around about 2 p.m. Eastern. I'll have another guest with me next week, and then I believe after that, Leo will be back. So please tune in next Sunday for Ask the Tech Guys. And let's see what else. Oh, go to twit.tv/ATG. There, you can subscribe to the show in audio or video formats. You'll find some links, subscribe to audio, subscribe to video on all the different platforms you use, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all those places. And now it's time. Rosemary Orchard, if folks want to follow you online and check out all your work, where should they go to do so?
The best place to go is rosemaryorchard.com, which has links to podcasts I host, books I've written, and other things that I do around the internet. And other than that, you can also find me in the Club Twit Discord. I'm usually hanging out in the iOS Today channel because, that's the show we do every week. But I do try and keep an eye on the other channels as well whenever stuff pops up. And you can also follow me on Mastodon at rosemary@snailedit.social. If you want to. And I am actually currently being active on Instagram, so there's a link to that from my website. What about you, Mikah?
I am at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to many of the places I'm most active online. Again, send in your questions, attg@twit.tv or atg@twit.tv. And that way you can get your question answered live on the air. You can also call us call.twit.tv. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Ask the Tech Geeks with Rosemary Orchard and me, Mikah Sargent. I'll see you next week for another episode. Goodbye and happy Easter.
Hey, we should talk Linux. It's the operating system that runs the internet, a bunch of game consoles, cell phones, and maybe even the machine on your desk. You already knew all that. What you may not know is that Twit now has a show dedicated to it, the Untitled Linux Show. Whether you're a Linux pro, a burgeoning sysadmin, or just curious what the big deal is, you should join us on the Club Twit Discord every Saturday afternoon for news, analysis, and tips to sharpen your Linux skills. And then make sure you subscribe to the Club Twit exclusive Untitled Linux Show. Wait, you're not a Club Twit member yet? Well, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and sign up. Hope to see you there.